Welcome to part 2 of our M. Night Shyamalan retrospective. This segment will feature the reviews of Signs, The Village,
Sorry, I completely
and Lady in the Water. So, Signs. Coming out of 2 other films, how are you feeling on M. Night Shyamalan so far?
I don't know, he makes decent films. I didn't like Old though, so... I never have a loyalty to directors, you know that.
But you can appreciate where a director succeeds,
yeah.
and you can tell that the films that we've watched, they have a M. Night Shyamalan imprint. He has his identity, and we had a brief conversation where you turned around and said, I can see M. Night Shyamalan in Old now, but
Badly.
he shit the bed a lot. And this is the thing as well, M. Night Shyamalan's really adept at making slow movies, but slow movies that you're not dulled by or bored by. He's very good at setting up tension, pace, rhythm, emotional stakes, general stakes, not steaks as in
chicken
steaks or char-grilled steaks or
pork steaks,
beef steaks, medium rare steaks. It's steaks.
Medium rare dick.
So, shall we go for the synopsis, please? Synopsis, please.
After his wife's death in a freak accident, Reverend Graham Hess questions his faith and even leaves the church. 6 months later, he discovers a gigantic crop circle in his yard. Similar events happen all over the world. Graham's children think it's aliens, his brother thinks it's pranksters, and Graham doesn't know what to think. As more and more strange events occur, he realises something big is coming, and it probably won't be friendly.
What can make geometric shapes the size of a football field?
What kind of machine can bend a stalk of corn over without breaking it?
Can't be by hand, it's too perfect.
So the aliens can't read our minds?
Oh.
Some animals around the county have been acting funny. Some of them violent. It's almost like they act when they smell a predator around.
Amman, Nairobi, Bangalore, and Jerusalem as the
Same
latest.
shows on every station.
Every station?
It is the 18th reported crop site in that country in the last 72 hours.
I'm a little scared. All this stuff on TV. Joe Gills was in here talking about the end of the world.
They're staying in the shadows. It's called probing, to make sure things are all clear.
Clear for what?
For the rest of them.
There's a monster outside my room. Can I have a glass of water?
Ground forces are being assembled.
It's happening. Don't be afraid.
It's like War of the Worlds.
Believe it's going to pass. Don't be afraid.
They're in the house.
Here it comes. Don't be afraid.
This has the most Spielbergian edge about it. Just the family dynamic, the setup. It's also a science fiction film, though M. Night seems to view it more as a supernatural film, as evidenced by the featurettes we partially watched last night. It's another masterful inversion of a genre that, you know, if you talk about alien invasion, what do you come up with?
War of the Worlds.
Independence Day. I Am Legend.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is, as per usual, it's focused on trauma, belief systems, and also segregated communities. M. Night Shyamalan loves dalliances with this structure of not so much quarantining people, but societally, certain sectors are small, what you'd say, rural towns, out in the shtick towns. And if anything, this is a really mischievous film. It's really got its tongue in its cheek, whilst also being sincere and ultra-realistic, as is his norm.
He's quite clever at picking a specific area of issue sometimes. That
Personified in America.
Yeah, and really, really actually making it as real as it is.
Yeah.
And it feels very well researched, if not lived.
Yeah.
And something that he doesn't try and, let's just pick 3 random topics and try and cover them in one film. It's just like this one thing. So you've got, this one family that are very religious, and now how dare he leave the church?
The populace of that opinion, they still refer to Mel Gibson's character as father.
Yeah. And then now there's aliens come in, and that's the thing. It's like you've got the plot, which is the aliens, but the backstory is the lost faith thing, and he just picks that one thing to deal with, rather than like throwing a political term in there 5 minutes before the end. Candyman, 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 Candyman.
Thrown in a faux romance, or he could have gone so many ways, but he's very focused and dead set on where he wants to go, what the through line is. A lot of people can't accuse him. He's very meticulous, very studious, and the movie is very languid, very slow, but tense as fuck. I think this is like the most verbal you've been throughout any of his films, where you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, yeah, oh, for fuck's sake.
I was on the verge of struggling because it felt almost horror-like. And I was on the verge of, perhaps that was the thing that I can't identify, that I didn't quite fit, is probably because it is that element too far towards horror, and I start to get a bit like, so that's perhaps just my general fear of, just that general fear of horror movies, I suppose. It's kind of that want to keep it at an arm's length.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very, very tense, and in some ways you don't want to be hidden where the camera is, you want to be where things are happening, do you know what I mean?
And that's what's really interesting about this film, like, in any other any other invasion movie, you are always witness to these events as if you're a part of it. You're below it, you're a spectator, you're close within reach, whereas this is the reality. Big events, terrorism, natural disasters, we're distant, and our only connection is between us and the television.
Yeah.
Especially in the era that this is set, like, it is set within 2002 of its release, and there was not social media back then. Not to the likes of this family. It's like TV is a luxury in of itself.
But it's interesting as well to see, kind of following on from your point of being, it's like we're viewing viewers in that sense of like when we first see, the alien other than the leg in the cornfield, when we first see an alien, which is in, where was it?
It was Mexico.
Mexico. Spain. I feel like it's the same difference. It's really not. But we're watching Joaquin Phoenix watching the TV where they have got footage of real life. And at no point does it switch from him watching the TV and us watching the TV with him. It may zoom in to the footage, but at no point are we there with the Mexicans, those Mexican children, to watch what's going on.
We're always with the family there.
Yeah, which is interesting because you're that one bit removed, so you actually feel almost like you're part of the family rather than being this kind of bird's eye viewer.
Like a lot of films, it's like when someone's watching the television, all of a sudden you merge into that reality of what's happened. So you're going from that timeline to what's happened, whereas it's always a fixed POV from the family members.
It's not that bird's eye view where you get to swap wherever you want to be into. It's literally you are in the same place at the same time with those people, and never do you stray from that. And I think that's a very different type of cinema, I think, and a very interesting type of cinema. Actually, more realistic and more
resonant.
Effective will do.
It's really interesting. People criticise M. Night Shyamalan. They say he's not good at directing action. None of his movies are set up to be action films.
They don't need to be.
His sequences are not there to titillate. They're not there to have you going, fuck yeah! It's melodious, it's contemplative, it's almost airy-fairy, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's always, even in its groundedness, there is this overt M. Night Shyamalan isms, that it is a fairy tale. It's elevated, but so rooted enough. And this is probably one of Mel Gibson's strongest on-screen performances. It's a man who's untethered, who's willing to break at any point, not just in relation to his religion, but his family structures. And so much, again, is being told by performance rather than dialogue. He's obvious.
And he said that as well, actually, in one of the, I can't remember who it was, whether it was Mel or Hakeem, but one of them said that Night is very good at having a physical, telling a story through the acting, through what's happening, through the camera, and not through dialogue, which, you know, goes on to a conversation we've had recently about how everything has to be constantly told through speech, through conversation, or
monologuing, dialogue, soliloquies.
But it doesn't need to be, and I think that is what makes him a good director. Obviously there have been moments where he's gone wrong, but the films that we've seen up till now, if we forget that, if we begin where he started effectively rather than old, when you look at those films next to each other, you kind of go, well, he's a bloody good director, and he tells his stories through what's going on, not through speech, which is so different from everyone else. It really stands out against the rest.
And he's a visualist, and also his dialogue is used in such a sense that he's not going to use dialogue unless it's necessary. And when it is, a lot of people think that his dialogue sometimes is too heavy. I mean, come on now. The film is being told to you visually. Heavy in what sense? So much criticism is aimed at M. Night, and it's just clutching at straws to criticise him. Oh, he's just trying to improve on the last twist. I don't think he is. I think critics have put him in that box. I don't think he's trying to up himself in twists, and I'll go into that more into The Village, because that's a twist onto a twist, then reverts back to twist makes no fucking difference. This movie is called Signs, and a lot of people said it was on the nose. I mean, it's subtly done. It's. I like that it's not screamed at you. It's not highlighted. It's not paused. It's not. And when I say tongue-in-cheek, the movie has a sense of humour from character. Not laughing at the essence of the movie or the style or what he's trying to do, but Mel Gibson's character. He's like his brother trying to amp him up to ward off witches, aliens, and he's like, "You need to curse. You need to. It's a tactic. You need to scare them." And he's like, "You want me to use curse words?" He's like, "Yes, curse words." And he just runs out. He's like, "I'm very mad right now." It's just. It comes from character, and it builds character. It's character growth, character development, and it's clever. And even if his flavouring of dialogue is too heavy for you, that's your issue. It's not Knight's issue. And I think it's perfectly pitched for his film. And people speak when they need to speak, and they speak when they need to convey a sense. There's this very strange exchange between one of the police officers and both of the brothers and the children. And it's hypothesising about what the person is, where it is, and people are like, it's really uncomfortable and awkward and strange. Yes, because that's what the scene is calling for. Because in that sequence, it typifies what M. Night is going for. Those type of communities. They're so sheltered and so under each other's feet and under a rock. You know, it highlights the environment and society they're pitted in, their reality. Rather than, oh, it's an awkward exchange, he didn't know what to write in that engagement. No, it's there, evidential. You just got to give yourself to it. The signs are, whether you think on the nose, I think they're meticulously littered throughout. I think it's very clever.
I think they're placed very well, very, very well. You know, because it's one of those things where you look back and you go, oh my god, of course. You know, some of the things are kind of made more obvious to you towards the end. Particularly with the son having asthma. He has asthma for a reason, because of the fact that his lungs will be close to this poisonous gas, and you know, these kind of things that you go, oh my, of course, that makes perfect sense, and the water that the little one sort of leaves around in glasses.
A little Abigail Breslin.
But again, it's one of those things that, you know, that's a more obvious thing, that's a more obvious sign, but then there are some other signs that are much less obvious. They're not said or shown, and you kind of, once you have contemplated what you've seen and put it together again in your head, I suppose, because you have to kind of
and as Mel Gibson
undo it and redo it.
Kind of gathers all these pieces together and switches, and it's like swing, see.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, oh, M. Night's just told us it, and it's like, well, he had to do that because loads of audience members will still be like,
I don't get it.
What? So, you know, there's no middle ground half the time.
But there are also some of the smaller signs that if you're smart enough to see it, then you will. If you're not smart enough, you'll only see what's thrown at you.
Yeah.
It's very clever filmmaking because you are literally opening up your film to every type of viewer, the stupid ones and the smart ones. And to be honest, if you can't see those little signs and you're so annoyed that the big signs had to be shouted at you, maybe you need to think about your intelligence a little more.
For me, Signs is beautiful, and this, you notice with M. Night Shyamalan, when I post things on Facebook like stills, every shot is beautifully crafted. It is iconographic in a sense. It's gorgeous. It's interesting. It's contemplative, and that's a lot of what his films are. And a lot of people kind of say that he evolved into his own pretentiousness, his belief as a storyteller. I mean, if no one else is going to believe in you, believe in yourself. And the next film after we've reviewed The Village will be Lady in the Water, probably one of the most divisive films he's ever made. But I personally love it because there's a lot buried in there. But for me, Signs is strong as a family drama, a movie about faith, even when it's not talking specifically upon God. I think his faith was restored in his centrality to those around him, Mel Gibson's character, rather than God. Whether it's a message from God, it's a message from someone, something. And it's deftly handled. And M. Night Shyamalan, he's a very spiritual individual. I don't know if he's religious. There's always religious connotations, but his contemplation is very mystified and extremely mischievous. And this is what he says himself: I'm mischievous. I'm not a mystery man, I'm just mischievous. There's more that goes on beneath the surface, and, you know, sometimes I am smiling, you know, trying to hide my grin. But what he does here is not preaching at all, whereas a lot of religious, pseudo-religious tones, it's a preach. It's a sermon.
Yeah. I think, it's one of those things that, and quite frankly, it doesn't matter whether he's religious or not, or whatever. It's about showing an opinion or a point in time about a specific religion, and actually there's an element of, I think, no matter what religion you're in, you know, whether you believe wholeheartedly and you go to pray or church or whatever you go to every week, every day, every month, whatever, whether you do that or whether you're a bit more of a quieter,
insular,
not so much of a, you know, you kind of just get on with your day-to-day life but still do your, you know, your every now and then. The point of the matter is that when you lose someone in the way in which, you know, Mel Gibson's character lost his wife, you do always think, no matter what, it's like, why me, why them, why now, all of those things. And you sometimes, I mean, you can be the most non-religious person and still ask those questions. You can still say, why is this happening?
Believe in God, and I do go, why have you done this? Who am I talking to then?
Yeah, but that's the thing, because it doesn't matter who you're talking to. It's the fact of the matter is you will always say why. So I think the fact is with this is, yes, these people are clearly Christian, whether that be Catholic or Church of, well, I doubt it's going to be Church of England because it's in America, but it's where it's going to be Catholic then, isn't it? Or some form of Christian faith that perhaps isn't necessarily Catholic.
Judeo-Christianity.
But regardless of what you are, who you believe in, what you believe in, you're still going to ask why. And in some ways, if you believe, you are going to say things like, I hate you, because you've lost your wife and you're about to lose your son. It's not something you want to go through. It's not something that people should go through, in my opinion. But that's how life goes. And it's about questioning faith, not questioning the specific deity that you believe in.
Yes.
And that's what I sort of enjoy the most.
Absolutely.
Because it's not about, this is a very Christian film, or this is a very, you know, Jewish film, or whatever faith you want to grab hold of.
Mel Gibson would not do that.
But whatever faith you want to grab hold of and utilise and represent in a film, this isn't representing a religion, it's representing faith, and there is a huge difference in that.
Yes.
And it's about the faith, not the religion or the deity or the whatever you believe in. It's about the faith, and
you gotta have faith.
There's an element of, you don't have to have faith in a deity or God or whatever, but have faith in yourself. Have faith in other people.
His capabilities as a father, because that's he's questioning himself. His son in the film's questioning him and their relationship. There's a lovely scene where the son's like says to the uncle, played by Joaquin Phoenix, and he's like, "I wish you were my dad." He says, "Don't say that to me.
Yeah, don't
ever say that to me again."
No.
And just within that little scene, you're like, "Oh yeah, okay." It's become a lot more known that there's a fractious relationship, and it's interesting that there's a lot of fractious father-son relationships. I wonder if there's there's deep-laid context there, maybe with M. Night.
I mean, it's highly possible.
It's very interesting. It's a movie that you can pick apart, dissect, and you can find faults, you can find masterful, other deep, obsessive pathways. But for me, it's a very strong fitting piece. It's a natural extension of where M. Night has started and where he is growing. So, rating 4 signs.
4 stars.
4 stars, in agreement. Now, next is The Village. The Village.
I shall do the story. In a quiet, isolated village in old Pennsylvania, there lies a pact between the people of the village and the creatures who reside in the surrounding woods. The townspeople do not enter the woods, and the creatures do not enter the village. The pact stays true for many years, but when Lucius Hunt seeks medical supplies from the towns beyond the wood, the pact is challenged. Animal carcasses devoid of fur begin to appear around the village, causing the Council of Elders to fear for the safety of the village, the pact, and so much more.
We have always had, since the day we settled here, a gentle understanding with the creatures who live beyond our borders. We do not stray into their woods. They do not come into our village. I have always pictured them in some ways as our protectors. They have allowed us to live here, nestled amongst them in this untouched place. By the markings we find this morning on our homes, I feel they were warning us. We may question ourselves at moments such as these. Did we make the right decision to settle here? I fear our days of peace are over. In a way that I shall never know.
From the off, I'm just going to state this. I love this film. I don't think it really dawned on me how much I loved it until rewatching it a few hours ago. Lustrously photographed. What a perfect setting also. It feels like a fitting setting for an M. Night Shyamalan movie. And then it turns out it's not even a period piece. It's just, as said, criticism of his fruity dialogue. Mate, you can go crazy if it's a period piece. And it also feels a little bit more fitting. Roger Deakins is involved, a cinematographer, who is a sensational cinematographer, camera operator, and a great pairing. I love the whole location, art direction, costume settings, but what I love the most is this film knows what it is. It isn't confused of what it is. As usual, it's meticulous, melodious, contemplative, haunting, eerie, with a really sensational performance from Bryce Dallas Howard. How she didn't get any recognition from the Oscars, because this is like one of her big breakout roles, where it was like, oh, she's a thing.
Yeah.
Even though her daddy is the famous Ron Howard, you know, she didn't cash in that check. Like, I'm going to become successful with my dad's name. I'm going out there. I'm gonna audition, and I'm gonna be recognised. And probably one of the most realistic portrayals of a blind person from someone who isn't blind.
That was brilliant.
It's very specific, and even then, when she's conveying a sense of awareness of people's colours, there's still always this almost glazed nature to her, like she can't focus, so it's always, and her eyes don't know what they're doing, because a lot of blind people, they don't know what their eyes are doing. There's no physical or conscious decisions being made because they lack of that. Joaquin Phoenix, as usual, lends his name to this film, but he also lends a I don't know what to say really, he feels to me like a
I loved his character.
He felt like the character in of itself is pitted to be the one who's going to breach the foundation. He's the one who's posing the questions. He has no fear. He has the tough exterior. He can shut off his emotions. He can be handled. He is decent. He is loving, but he's also, you know, questioning the validity of what's going around. He says to his mum, played by Sigourney Weaver, "There's secrets in every corner. Everywhere there's secrets. And he, in himself, has defined that outside of here are answers in these other... They don't call them villages, do they? They call them towns.
It's because I think it's because it's like the townspeople. I think because when they're referring to the towns, it's the town effectively, but it's kind of old people, old village type speak. So that's why they call it the towns, which is odd in itself.
Which would be in the 1800s, like a metropolis, like a Victorian London type thing,
exactly.
but set in America, Pennsylvania.
When you actually get to the town, you're like, oh, so it's like a city then.
Yeah, it's a sensational movie. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix's character is, you know, set up to be the hero, and then that's swiftly, literally put to bed with a couple of knife blows to his chest.
I was about to be totally gutted because I thought they were going to kill him off.
I recalled it wrong. I was like, oh yeah, he dies. And then when it's like, I need to go out to get the medicines, I'm like, no, he didn't die. What?
No, but that's the thing. I thought, oh, they murdered him, and I was like, they completely. As soon as that, I was like, no, you've ruined the film. Totally ruined the film, because for me, him and his chemistry with Bryce Dallas Howard was just brilliant. So, you couldn't, if you killed him off, you'd just ruin the whole thing, I think. And actually following this character of Ivy Walker, and you're following her literally to save the life of the person that she loves, who's
her purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And you could really see that love there was true, and has been sort of bonded from a very young age.
A very young age, and he kind of distanced himself. I think he feels that emotions are weaknesses in the beginning of this film, because he sees something between his mother and somebody else, and he's like, there's love there, but both of you can't have it. And you can understand why he's shut off. And I love how the orchestrations of these monsters initially aren't pitted just to set up the big payoff that the monsters are encroaching, and that they're getting closer, and they're pissed off, and they're leaving their mark. Even though there's loads of layers, and it's a brainwashing it's a brainwashing tactic. That sequence is all executed so he can come to the fore and fully personify how he's actually feeling. And the visual semblance and storytelling where she holds out her hand and she's like, he is out there, he is out there, he is going to come for me. And then you see in the background this vague, cloaked, porcupine, hunched, spiked creature, and he grabs her, and it's done in super slow motion. And there's no monsters in the background, like, it's a romantic union.
Yeah.
Beautiful, poetic. Everything in this film is poetry, but visually. Bryce Dallas Howard's performance is of a dedicated and affirmed individual. But she's also questionable, because her relationship with Lucius, she plays Ivy, is, am I too tomboyish? There is an insecurity. Though she's very rooted, there is an insecurity, because she wants him to verbalise. And there's an exchange later on where she finds Lucius sitting on her porch. And he gets overwhelmed, like, stop asking me to voice. If I want to dance, I will dance. If I want to marry you, I will marry you. And I'm like, fuck, man, no, don't alienate the woman who's actually she loves you. She adores you. She has questioned you in an earlier scene, like, why don't you pick me up when I fall? Why don't you take my hand anymore? And that makes it so more beautiful in that moment when he does. And he's like, I am still there. And I think he kind of realises, I can go beyond the threshold of the perimeter without having to do it. So he's kind of not shutting himself off emotionally anymore. He's allowing himself. And then when he blows up and he voices these things and he starts tearing up, it doesn't become an aggressive verbalization. It's a real deep-seated repressed part of him. And within that moment, it's sealed. And I love how personal and private it is. We don't see this big romantic kiss. The camera slowly drifts away. It's people would say his filmmaking tendencies are untraditional, whilst also very traditional, very old heyday. You can see a lot of Hitchcock's influences in this film, in all of his films. But he has his own specific tone and look, this austereness, and the great big reveal being they're a cult. They're segregated from supposed society that they feel at threat with, at odds with. And then another reveal is it's not a period piece. It's set in our modern time, and it is a heavily executed social experiment. A social experiment, but not to a detriment, but to the purification of innocence, keeping innocence stayed. You stay there. Building up this village from hurt and from counselling things. And then the biggest twist of all isn't that it's not a period piece and that it's a heavily orchestrated, almost governmentally implemented thing. The biggest twist is she comes back, returns with the medicines, as I refer to it as, and this is going to sanctify the future of why it's going to work and why it should work. It loops back and eats its own tail. You think this is going to crumble and come to its knees when William Hurt's character opens up. But he's like, no, this will actually make our foundation stronger. Yeah. And it amazes me that people don't pick up that that's the biggest twist. It is certifying that this is going to go on longer than we anticipated or should anticipate.
And I think it should in some ways, because I think that, they have got the reason why they've moved in the first place, the reason why it's created in the first place is purely because of the fact that, there was shootings and this person got hurt and that person got killed and whatever.
Greed, money.
Yeah, whereas they want a life that's innocent. They want somewhere that's just totally. And I mean, when I was looking for a synopsis that was appropriate, because you know how many stories they put up, one of them actually related it to be very much Amish. It's explained as this Amish community, and it is really
a religious foundation. But starting from the beginning, and there's no form of confliction or there's no erosion of religious rigmarole or mechanizations. It's not an insidious, scathing criticism on religion. an indoctrination. There's purpose behind it. Though the brainwashing elements really, it makes you uneasy. Well, that's a topic of discussion. But overall, it's the detriment now to let everything fade and crumble is actually the detriment to everyone else. And it's another twist within a twist. Why did you send out a blind girl of all people? Because she hasn't engaged with the world on a level that a normal centuried person would. It's ingenious. It's so clever. And I love that William Hurt is like, sending her out there is the best case scenario for us, because she comes back and she succeeds. It kind of folds in and we can again rewrite our history. But whilst this happens, I think they've kind of realised. William Hurt says to Brendan Gleeson's character, I can't stand back any longer and allow this stuff to happen. We've got to give a little bit of leeway. We can continue this fiction. And this whole event, and this is the twist of the film, the whole event folds in. It's not crumbling. It's reinforced it. It's reinforced a certain belief. There is faith. There is almost poetic justice in the death of Adrian Brody's character, who, is a pitiful character, and you feel sorry for him, and there's a really good portrayal of someone on, an autistic spectrum or special needs. He got a lot of criticism for his performance because he came away from a foreign language film and got an Oscar for it. I thought this was a really good next step in his career, and I thought it was a really dedicated, well-versed, studied performance. Just the physicality and the simplicity of it and the subtle nuances. Because you felt like that through the film, didn't you, about his character? You're like, I don't know whether I should like him or dislike him for his actions.
Well, I mean,
it's his
like attempted fucking murder, but then equally...
Is he liable?
The thing is he is so disabled with whatever it is that he has, that it means that there's an element of, did he really know what he was doing? Well, he went back and stuck the knife in a second time, so yes he did, but did he really know the full consequences of that?
And then it poisons that question, because he's like, bad colour, nasty colour. So did you do that because you realise that it's the negative colour? There's so many layers, and people don't give this film enough credit. People got hung up on the idea of, M. Night just did one of the most laziest twists ever. He's not put himself in the books to make movies just to be about twists. There's so much more going on in this movie, meta-contextually. And the twist in a twist in a twist. The biggest twist is you didn't see this coming, and people get blindsided because they're not wrapped up in the narrative, they're not wrapped up in the story and the emotion, they're wrapped up in what's M. Night going to do next? What is he going to do next? What are you going to do next at the end of the film? If you're sitting there from the beginning like, what's the big twist at the end, you ruin it for yourself because it's never going to live up to expectations. Even though you haven't got a concrete idea of what it might be, you still are going to go away dissatisfied. And the ending is, the biggest twist is, this hasn't brought their community down. This isn't ending what they've set up. It's reinforced it. As macabre and eerie and uncomfortable and disenfranchised as it seems, it works. And the notion of cult, commune, well-intended social experiment, well-intended, new perspective of life to ensure that there's some form of sanctity with the remainder of their days. They've come from a bad place. Why don't we go back to the old ways, the old traditionalist ways, where it's not dictated by organised religion, it's dictated by good deeds. Like good deeds and reinforce actions, where certain people with religious backgrounds do. It's about being good to your neighbour, good to your friends. It's about what you offer and not just to this higher entity. In a roundabout way, what did you like about this? And what didn't you like?
There's not as much I didn't like, to be honest. I mean, I think we get into a habit as general viewers to have a Hollywood ending, to have a happy ending, so it was very hard to see that it ended with her coming back with the medicine but not really knowing what happened and whether he got better or not. But I appreciate the film wasn't about that, but I like loose ends to be tied.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the only thing I can really complain about. But I mean, yeah, I very much like the concept. I enjoyed the film. It was tense and, you know, a twist that I wasn't expecting. It threw me at one point because it's all a farce, it's all a farce, it's all a farce, and then there's a fucking creature chasing her, and I'm like, how can it be a farce but there's a creature chasing her?
And there's incremental things, there's signages, posted stamped, like the game that these children play, they stand with their backs towards the woods and see how long they can last. But the thing is, it's all reinforced, it's more subconscious, it's more brought onto yourself, because I highly doubt someone's in the woods dressed as a monster 24/7 going with twigs. It's in their head.
Yeah.
And Hat Queen Phoenix's is like, you know, you're the one to beat. And then she uses that to trick Adrian Brody's garbed up monster, and he ends up dying. And there's a poeticism in that. Was it deserved? Maybe, maybe not. Questions are open, discussions can be had. It's not just about the great big reveal. Watching this going in, the ending, some people are like, I saw it coming, good for you. But don't feel that makes you smarter than the film, because there's so much more going on here that's probably just passed you like a speeding vehicle.
But the thing is you can always say to any film, oh, I saw that coming. And what's your point? Some of us did, some of us didn't. Like, it's a completely obsolete thing to say, to be honest.
And the critics literally projected that, and also made M. Night question his own validity as a filmmaker. And Lady in the Water, you'll see going in, is a criticism up on critics and their evaluations. A little bit heavy-handed in points and a bit too mischievous. You cheeky M. Night Shyamalan Lima. And it's heartbreaking because that no restoration. This film has almost been put to bed with him. He doesn't even consider it. He doesn't even allow it to be recognised as his part of his CV, and I think that's unfair. But it came at a point where people were like, we're getting M. Night Shyamalan fatigue. You didn't give us the great big reveal and twist we wanted. And it's heartbreaking because I think this is a 5-star masterpiece. It is one of his best films. And why isn't it part of the reissued box set? We've got Signs, we've got The Sixth Sense, we've got Unbreakable. Where's The Village? Where is The Village? And there's so many more films now that these critics can criticise in his film CV, and you have reason to go, that is awful, that is shit. It kind of, I feel like, what's the worst of M. Night Shyamalan? Go back to The Village and you realise how supreme it is in amongst the rest of his catalogue. But I loved it, I've said it, I think it's a 5-star masterpiece, one of his best. What about you?
4 stars.
4 stars. Anything else you want to add? Anything else conveyed in the film that you picked up on, that you enjoyed? Are you about to cry?
I don't think so. Am I about to cry?
You look like you're about to cry from this angle.
No.
Oh, I am. It's such a beautiful film. Anyway, so the next review will hopefully be for Lady in the Water. Don't worry, we don't have to record that tonight. And you don't have to watch Lady in the Water if you don't want to tonight. So, yes. Next up, we will be reviewing Lady in the Water.